6 minutes after 5 o'clock on a Friday Luya to you, a kind of muted Friday Luya celebration in the wake of yesterday's conviction of Donald Trump, 34 counts. Kind of irritating. Okay, beyond irritating, really irritating. Donald Trump spoke today for 35 minutes at Trump Tower, and I thought he was pretty darn strong. No teleprompter, just a little tiny note card. I don't know if you noticed that. There was all kinds of discussion on the cables, as they like to call the cable news outlets. CNN, fascinated. They took the teleprompter down, and he went out there with just a small note card. Imagine if Joe Biden tried to speak for 35 minutes. Imagine we would have probably 30 minutes of gaff tape that we could just play over and over again. And I've related that the final question today, when Joe Biden was asked about Donald Trump and what Trump had said about seeing himself as a political prisoner. I got to play that moment again. I know it's visual, I know it's radio, and people can't see it. But the question was asked. Joe Biden walked away from the podium towards the door to leave the room where he was in the White House giving this presentation about a proposed ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Joe Biden stopped just short of the door as the question apparently reached his brain. And then he turned and smiled. Like a Bond villain.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir?
There it is.
Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign?
He keeps walking.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
Should he be on the ballot, sir?
Should he be on the ballot? Which member of the press is all for removing people from the ballot? Yeah, it's kind of a creepy moment, maybe the creepiest moment of the week, when he stopped and smiled like, I did that. I did that. Very, very creepy event today. Very creepy. And then he was confused as well.
Indefinite war in pursuit of an unidentified notion of total victory will not bring Israel, will only bog down Israel and Gaza.
Now, I went to Catholic schools when I was a kid, Catholic grammar schools, and we would frequently have to go up to the blackboard. It wasn't a whiteboard then. We actually had black slate boards or green, and you used the chalk and the erasers. And the nuns would make us diagram the sentence. And I would just like somebody to try at home. If you're a student of the days when education taught grammar and we taught sentence structure, and diagram this sentence from Joe Biden as he was trying to make a point, which I'm not quite sure what it was.
Indefinite war in pursuit of an unidentified notion of total victory will not bring Israel, will only bog down Israel and Gaza.
By the way, that total victory, that is the slogan of the IDF in their battle against Hamas. Total victory. They just want total victory. What's wrong with that? Because if you don't achieve total victory, if you don't completely wipe out Hamas, they will resurface. They will resurface. Now, Joe seems to think that they're no longer capable of carrying out a similar attack as they did on October 7th.
Hamas no longer is capable of carrying out another October 7th. It's one of Israel's main objectives in this war.
No, the main objective is the complete elimination of Hamas, not just to make sure they're no longer capable of carrying out another October 7th. And now we're discovering that the event that happened a couple of days ago, that Israel was said to have bombed a refugee camp when they were in fact going after a couple of Hamas leaders, apparently hit them. But where they hit them also happened to be an ammunitions dump, a place where they were storing ammo, so that if you hit that ammo dump, it's going to explode, and that's what caused the problem. Joe Biden's going to try and take credit if there is a ceasefire. He's going to try and take credit. Israel deserves the credit, but Joe's asking for credit sending U.S. forces in there. But we forget that he's the guy who approved the funding of Iran and all of its proxies to go after Israel, either directly or indirectly.
As someone who just sent the U.S. forces to directly defend Israel when it was attacked by Iran.
Yeah, he wants credit for that. He also is the guy who approved the building of that pier, $300+ million. I think it was $320 million of your dollars, of my dollars. $320 million to build a pier to bring supplies to Hamas. And we now know that the pier was built badly. And I guess there was a little crumbling of the pier. God knows how much of our money was wasted. He was at the White House today with the Kansas City Chiefs and their victory celebration. I didn't check and see. Do we know if Harrison Butker showed up for the celebration? Because the White House is going to be a little upset if the kicker for the Chiefs shows up, because he took some shots at Joe Biden for being a fake Catholic. My mother would call him a cafeteria Catholic, the guy who would pick and choose which parts of Catholic doctrine to follow based on his own feelings. But they brought a Chiefs helmet for him, and he put it on. A lot of people are talking about this, that the Chiefs are laughing, but they're not laughing with him. I'm not sure it's going to fit. They gave him a big helmet. It looks a giant helmet. They all signed it.
Put it on.
I love it. You got a couple of guys in the Chiefs yelling, put it on, knowing full well that Joe Biden, being the dolt he is, will try and put the helmet on. Coach Andy Reid is holding the helmet for Joe, and Joe's looking at it. He's got his aviators on because he's outside, of course. Take the strap off, Joe. You won't be able to put the helmet. He's trying to put a helmet on with sunglasses. How embarrassing is that? They finally made him take the sunglasses. The aviators are off as he's trying to put the football helmet on. Now, I got to say, this is not quite as embarrassing as Michael Dukakis in the tank, but Biden up there with a helmet on with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he approaches the microphones. And nobody can hear him because they turned the mics off. He tried to make a couple of statements, and you can't hear a word, so he finally takes it off. Very embarrassing, but they're laughing at him. They're not laughing with him. Very disturbing. At least the Chiefs got their moment. I hope Harrison Butker got his moment, because he should with his team. And happy to see that the team basically stood by him for the comments he made at a graduation. Now it's almost 2 weeks ago that he made that comment. Almost 2 weeks ago. So let's hope they didn't exclude him from that. So many things that we want to get to today. I mentioned after yesterday's verdict that The View, and we talked about The View yesterday, the harpies on The View, but Whoopi Goldberg came out yesterday or today on a Friday, and she's almost never on The View on a Friday. Almost never, because I guess she's that important. She doesn't have to be there for a Friday. And she came out to make a statement. She never says Donald Trump's name. Today was a different day.
Donald John Trump. Don't tell me. Is a convicted felon.
And of course, they lit the applause lights at The View so everybody could cheer and grunt But she said initially said he is a confected felon. I don't know what that means, a confected felon. That's kind of strange. Very strange. I mentioned earlier that there was an update on the bird flu, and I would try and get this guy to get on the air with us. Dr. Michael Roizen from the Cleveland Clinic is my go-to in all medical stories. There was another report of a bird flu case being detected among humans. That makes me worried. Dr. Roizen, thank you for being here, sir. Should we be worried about human-to-human transmission? Is it time to panic yet?
Well, we're all scared that it will go human to human, but it hasn't so far and doesn't seem to be getting in humans, even those who are drinking raw milk. This is not a message, drink raw milk. No, we don't want you to drink raw milk. We want you to drink only pasteurized milk when the bird flu is active, clearly. But in any case, it doesn't appear that many humans are able to be susceptible to H5N1 yet. And that yet is a big thing. The public health community is worried that the yet will go away and that the virus will mutate so that it is transmissible to humans and from humans to humans, in which case the second fear they have is that the vaccines we have, which will protect against it, will be avoided, and this is a very serious, in humans, virus. Even in birds. Birds get it and they die. I mean, it's about 100% in birds. But in humans, it's been 50%, and I think the 23 people who have had confirmed cases since 2010. So we're scared about it, but so far it hasn't spread, and it appears that it may be susceptible to Tamiflu and other treatments if we get it early enough. So I don't think panic should be involved, but we still have to be vigilant about it.
That's good. Okay, we will attempt to be vigilant, and as we also focus on the work you're doing with longevityplaybook.com, and I encourage people to go there and get the weekly newsletter. I wanted to let you know you're getting some focus on this. There was a big story bubbling yesterday about longevity escape velocity and how we might be able to kind of live forever by the 2030s. So there are people jumping on the bandwagon, Dr. Roizen.
Right. That's what the Great Age Reboot book was all about, meaning there are 14 areas of research into the mechanism of aging, and each has hit escape velocity in animals. What do we mean by escape velocity? Escape velocity means you get 1 or more years younger for every year you live. So that means you can reverse, if you will, and stay around for a long time, maybe forever, as long as you avoid accidents and disabling things like that. So George Church is quoted in this. He is a magnificent geneticist with a lot of accolades at Harvard and MIT. And he and another group of people at Harvard and MIT have started a spin-off company. And what that spin-off company does is exactly the same thing on escape velocity, but not for humans, but for dogs. So if you've got a male beagle dog in the 15 to 17 year age range, this company for a price, believes that they can make that dog a puppy again. They're using epigenetic reprogramming, one of the 14 areas, one that has received a Nobel Prize by Dr. Yamanaka in Japan for finding the 4 genes that if you turn them on, and they apparently are easily turned on by a combination of current drugs, if you turn them on, you reset your epigenes, the things that control your genes, the switches that control your genes, back to where their original factory settings.
Wow.
What do we mean by that? Your genes make proteins. The proteins are what happens, are what determines what you do, what happens to you. The switches that control whether those genes are on or not are things called epigenes. And one of the 14 areas of research into the mechanism of aging is that your epigenes get damaged as we get older, switches get changed, and that's why we age. And what they've found is a technique. We all have repair systems. Injure a muscle, you repair it. Injure a bone, you can repair it. Injure your liver, you can repair it. Well, we all have repair systems, and this one is a system he discovered that repairs the settings on your epigenes. And that's
his
what
name is Dr.
George
Michael
Church
Roizen. He is with the Cleveland Clinic. He's also one of the big brains behind LongevityPlaybook.com, a place you should visit, and then hang out with us every week because we talk about the innovations and the news that's happening all around health and medicine. Dr. Roizen, as always, my friend, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I'm looking forward to Escape Velocity myself.
Washington's best way to wake up. O'Connor and Company with Larry O'Connor. Weekday mornings from 5 to 9 on WMAL.
That's true. That is very true. It's the best way to wake up here in Washington. It's Mike Opelka, that's me, in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese program. Almost out of time this half hour. Josh Hammer's joining us next, but I also have a confession to make. I hope the audience will understand. I agree with something James Carville said publicly this week. That's right. I agree with something James Carville said. I'll go public with what he said and why I agree with it just around the corner. It's Opelka in for Coglianese on WMAL. It is 5:34 on this Friday. Mike Opelka is my name, sitting in for Vince Coglianese, my friend who's on the mend, and I'll be here as often as he needs me. We are minutes away from speaking with the very, very brilliant Josh Hammer. You know him from NewsWeek. You know him from the Josh Hammer Show. You know him from the First TV. I actually have a history with the First TV, but I have to finish my confession. Before we went away, I confessed to the Vince Coglianese audience right here on WMAL that I, in fact, agree with James Carville on something. And I don't know if that's going to disqualify me from ever showing up here again. But I think Carville might have gotten something right. You know, a broken clock is right twice a day, but let's see. Just indulge me on this. I know Hammer's on hold. I'll be right with him, but I teased this, so I have to play this.
And why are we forgiving student loans for people that go to Harvard, which, according to Scott Galloway, quite accurately, is nothing but a hedge fund that has classrooms? Well, they got a $52 billion fucking surplus.
Whoa, I'm sorry.
Taxpayers going to bail.
Please dump that. That should have been dumped. Tell me you got that. Thank you, Dave. But anyway, I'm sorry, Carville. That should have been the bleeped one. Carville said they got a $52 billion surplus, and he thinks that all of these colleges should be forced to put money up to reimburse the students for their student loans. So I agree with James Carville on that. And thank you, Dave Kimber, for saving my cheese. I better get to Josh Hammer. Josh Hammer is joining us, editor-at-large at NewsWeek. He's also got this great Josh Hammer show, and he's over at the First on TV as well. Hello, Josh. Welcome, sir.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. You almost heard the end of my career with Carville F-bombing, but the guys in the booth caught it. It happens. It happens, but thank God for the safety of the brilliant people at the board. Josh, yesterday was kind of a tough day for a lot of people, but how are Republicans, how are conservatives supposed to behave after this?
Well, look, I mean, they say that the first sign of having a plan is to not be in denial. And the very first thing, I think, is for conservatives, for the American right, for patriots, constitutionalists, for all the various people that Hillary Clinton infamously grouped together as the so-called deplorables back in 2016. The first thing to do is to just stare down the barrel as to where we are. This is not your grandfather's America. This is not the America of, picking apple pie and going down to the local 4th of July picnic and, kumbaya, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and, we'll have our bickering over what the appropriate marginal tax rate should be. No. At this point, we are in an environment where the prosecutorial apparatus of one major party, what I like to refer to as the Democrat lawfare complex, they are prosecuting and trying to incarcerate their political opposition. And, Mike, I've heard a lot of chatter over the past 24 to 36 hours. Oh, it's just Donald Trump. It's just the guy who had these vague mafia connections through Roy Cohn's fixer, January 6th, blah, blah, blah. No, it's actually not just Donald Trump at all. In fact, this goes back at least as far as the Obama administration when they prosecuted the nuns. Yeah, they sued nuns of the Little Sisters of the Poor because they didn't want to subsidize abortifacients foisted upon them by Obamacare. Biden obviously has taken it to a whole nother level. Good friend John Eastman has been through the ringer. He's being disbarred in California, prosecuted in Georgia and Arizona. He lost everything, including multiple debankings from Bank of America and USAA. And obviously Trump and the 4 criminal prosecutions, in addition to the Tish James civil suit against the Trump organization, that's getting a lot of the attention now. So the very first thing to do is to recognize where you are. Now, if we aspire towards recovering a status quo ante of neutrality, which is what we probably all should want, that's Lady Justice blindfolded, equal, we're all equal under law. This is what John Adams famously wrote about back in colonial Massachusetts, the Founding Fathers. If you want to get back to that, my proposition, and I recognize it's a somewhat controversial one, although I don't think it should be, is that if you want a truce with these people, with these savages, these miscreants who are trying to throw us into jail, if you want a truce, you're going to have to get to a mutually assured destruction place. You're going to have to take some politicized prosecutions yourself. You're going to have to bloody some noses, proverbially speaking, in order to make sure that they know that they can't overreach like this again. And that's going to be a slow and painful process, Mike. But these conversations have to start, and they have to start, frankly, yesterday.
So you're in favor of let's get in the same arena with them and get as dirty as they did and take out some of theirs, the same way they were trying to take out Donald Trump.
The short answer is yes, and it brings me no joy or pride or anything to say that, right? I mean, I'm a lawyer by background. I went to a great law school. I clerked for a federal appeals judge. I've published constitutional scholarship. I speak at law schools. I've given a lot to our system and advocating for constitutional principles and the broader Anglo-American legal tradition going back to the development of common law in England. I mean, these are things that I care a lot about. But I have to be sober as a commentator, as a host, as a pundit, as a columnist. I have to be sober about where we are. And I just don't see another way forward other than to try to take some scalps as a retributive measure, but also as a prophylactic measure to try to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And, there's lots of other ways that this might go down, right? So one example that I've been giving is, let's say that you're a 30 to 35-year-old young DA, a young district attorney in a very red jurisdiction, the Texas Panhandle, someplace like that. If you're ambitious and you want to make inroads with your party and try to start climbing the political ladder, what is stopping you from filing a creative indictment against someone like an Anthony Fauci or a Deborah Birx? Hunter Biden's federal gun trial is set to start this Monday. His federal tax trial is allegedly starting in September from special counsel David Weiss. But what about all the foreign stuff? What about the FARA corruption, Ukraine, China? So there's a lot of meat left on that bone, too. So these are just some ideas. But, again, I'm not happy about what I'm saying. It saddens me that I'm on your I'm on the show talking like this. I never would have imagined that I would be saying these things back when I was in law school 8 to 10 years ago or so. But again, I just have to try to be sober and empirical about where we are in America right now.
Well, I think it's fair to put a little bit of the fear of God in the other side, that we're done with just sitting back and let you punch us. We're done with you just walking over us. I think that's fair. I also think it's important to remind them of how their actions cost them when they did stuff like this in the past. For example, when Harry Reid got rid of the limits on filibustering for judicial appointments, many warned him, many in his own party warned him, hey, don't do this. It's going to screw up Supreme Court nominations. And sure enough, it did. But they don't remember that stuff. So I don't think there's a whole lot of brain muscle memory among the leadership of the Democrats. They just think that they can keep doing this. So I agree with you on this. I'm all for getting to the almost Elliot Ness point that they take out one of ours, we're going to take out 10 of theirs, and we should start again. But what are the chances that leadership in the GOP will actually find a candidate to do that? Or are we just going to have to wait for that to develop organically?
The odds are extraordinarily low. I mean, the one person who might actually take a public stance along these lines is other than Donald Trump himself, right? I mean, he's the kind of person who could actually get some momentum moving. But realistically speaking, this is going to have to come from the grassroots level. It's going to have to be local DAs in towns and counties, maybe some state attorneys general who are well positioned. And it doesn't have to just be people like Hunter Biden here. So, one example that came to mind for me, this is kind of a Venn diagram overlap of two things that can and should be done. The immigration issue, for what it's worth, in my mind, continues to be the number one substantive issue that Republicans ought to run on in this presidential election year. So how about you try to kill two birds with one stone? And if you're an ambitious prosecutor in a state like Texas or Florida, or which is where I live, some state like that, how about you try to file some high-profile prosecutorial lawsuit, some criminal prosecution against a high-profile open borders activist who is actively wreaking havoc when it comes to the cartels and the human trafficking rings and the fentanyl that's flowing into our country, things like that. It would have to be high-profile in order to have some sort of deterrent effect, but that's just one sort of way to try to kill two birds with one stone, I think.
Well, I think it's interesting that you suggest the border issue and the immigration issue, but it feels like that issue has slid off the front page a little bit. We've been fascinated by this trial, and we've been all wrapped up in the economy. Is the border still a hot enough issue for conservatives and for undecided voters?
Yeah, I think it is. I do think that it is. I mean, the economy continues to sputter along, and inflation is very much a key issue as well. And that's also a huge winning issue for Republicans. And I think Republicans would be remiss to also not focus on inflation. But, I was in, I won't say the exact state, but I was in a Midwestern state about 2 months ago or so in late March. And I was meeting with a high-ranking state official. And this state is obviously not a border state by definition of being in the Rust Belt area. And I was talking to this official, and I kind of prefaced, and I said, so-and-so, like your state's obviously not a border state, but what are you doing about this? And he kind of laughed and said, Josh, every single state is a border state right now. What are you talking about? Because every community is feeling the effects of this. I mean, what the Biden so-called parole program has done in terms of shipping and flying and busing migrants from the border to communities all across the country. I mean, my family in New York City, they talk to me about this issue all the time because of what they're seeing there on the streets of New York City. While Alvin Bragg, by the way, is too busy trying to throw Donald Trump in jail. He's letting illegal aliens run over all of these civic institutions in New York City, and his priorities aren't exactly in order. But I do think that immigration is a major issue for this fall. And I think that Republicans can also make it a campaign pitch that they are going to be the ones to end this lawfare. Now, admittedly, the way to end this lawfare might be to make it a little worse in the short term, again, to bloody some noses. But I think that they can credibly campaign on trying to do their best efforts to restore us to a system of lady justice and blind rule of law, even if it takes in the short to midterm some less than fully kosher tactics, shall we say.
Well, I'm down with that. I think we got to get in the fight before we can expect to win the fight. And you bring up an excellent point. We're talking with Josh Hammer. He's got so much going on. Senior editor-at-large at NewsWeek. He's got the Josh Hammer Show and America on Trial with Josh Hammer, first on TV. And you're everywhere. Do you have a clone, Josh Hammer?
So, it's funny that you asked that. So I actually do have a colleague at the First whose name is actually Josh Hammer. And to make it even funnier enough, there's actually another former journalist at NewsWeek, which is also where I work, who is named Joshua Hammer. And I actually get confused with the latter guy a lot because, we're both at NewsWeek. I was actually taking an Uber to a TV studio a few years ago, and the Uber driver was like, man, I was so excited to pick you up because I was reading in your memoir about how you were held captive in Gaza by Hamas. And I was like, that's definitely not me.
Well, there's only one other Mike Opelka, and he's somewhere in Kansas, and he gets my hate mail, and I've apologized to him several times. But you should have a Josh Hammer and a Joshua Hammer happy hour and get all of you together one day and tell stories and exchange identities. I think there's a book there or a movie there that you could do. I guess not.
Look,
I was reaching.
I would welcome the opportunity to meet the other Joshua Hammer if he wants to do that sort of happy hour. I would be happy to do that.
Excellent. Well, I like your approach to coming in swinging, as it were, in the aftermath of the lawfare that was waged against Donald Trump and ultimately waged against the country. Because as Trump successfully has managed to get this sentence out there, and people, I think, are finally understanding it, they're not just coming for me. They could do this to each and every one of us. So until we fight back and let them experience the pain that Donald Trump went through, they're not going to stop. It's a little bit like the terrorists. Until you wipe them all out, they're just going to keep popping up. Josh Hammer, I encourage people to follow you on Twitter X. It's great stuff, and we appreciate you being here as well, sir. It is 5:55 on a Friday. Mike Opelka wrapping up a guest hosting for my friend Vince Coglianese, still under the weather, but on the right direction, I believe. Say a prayer for Vince. Let's get him better and get him back. I'll be here if he needs me. Before we get out of here, a couple of thoughts. I quoted Donald Trump earlier. I should let him say it himself. He did this morning at 6 minutes after 11.
If they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. These are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people.
He's right. I think he's spot on, 1,000% correct. These are bad people, in many cases, sick people. And if they could do it to him, and he's got the money and the lawyers, my God, what could they do to the rest of us? The debate, which is supposed to happen on CNN on June 27th, just might get upstaged thanks to Elon Musk. Musk is apparently setting up a debate on Twitter X, and one that will automatically include Robert Kennedy. Kennedy will easily be welcomed on the debate stage. Donald Trump said he'll be there. The person who has said no, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. So I wonder if Biden will get shamed into doing this. I doubt it. But I believe it's a great idea for both Trump and Kennedy. I think you'll see the real story behind both of them. So I'm encouraged by this news. And I'm encouraged we're going to actually get some other debates than the ones that CNN is setting up. And it just seems like it's so silly to exclude Kennedy from that. And he has filed legal motion to try and get himself into the debate. Will it happen? Doubtful. Really doubtful. I think these guys are just so against any kind of fairness, the thing they're always talking about. Keep your eyes on the polling this weekend. We'll see if there's going to be any real change after the 34 guilty counts against Donald Trump. I think he actually could continue going up. But that might be the halo from this original outrage. What happens in a couple of months is really what matters. It's been my honor to be here, as I've said. Thank you, Dave Kimber. Thank you, Corey. Great work. And thank you to this audience. Always appreciate the honor of being here. Till next time, testudo, my friends. Testudo.